Thanks for watching the Council in Brief. I'm Susan Kennedy. We're here with a summary of all the news of the Montgomery County Council for this second week in April. The Maryland General Assembly wrapped up its session last night with lawmakers rushing to make the midnight deadline on several proposals that would affect Montgomery County directly. The General Assembly approved a bill to raise the tax on alcohol from 6 to 9% in July. This means $9 million for Montgomery County in school construction funding. Also passed, the DREAM Act, which grants in-state tuition to all Maryland high school graduates regardless of their immigration status. The delegation also moved ahead with a plan that imposes higher penalties for electric companies that fail to meet strict reliability standards. The Assembly also voted to give counties a one-year delay in paying the maintenance of effort penalty. We spoke to council members about their thoughts on the session and how Montgomery County fared.
The council feels very energized by the news out of Annapolis that Montgomery County fared very well this year, and I think that's because we all worked as a team. So we're very excited about that. One of the things that came out of Annapolis was on the penalty for MOE, which will now, the law has stated that the penalty will be delayed for a year. And that's a very, very important item to have passed through Annapolis for us, but not just for Montgomery County, but for other counties who are all undergoing extraordinary stress under these economic conditions that we all find ourselves in. So, so that penalty, if that's what you want to call it, I think that's a bad way to describe it, will not go into effect for a whole other year.
Montgomery County delegation fought real hard for this measure, as well it should, because it is Montgomery County that has suffered the most, because it is PEPCO that has been the worst, among the worst in the nation, and that simply should not be. And now we finally have taken a step forward whereby they will be held accountable. The Maryland Public Service Commission, which regulates them, must adopt standards, and there will be financial penalties if they don't meet them. So this is a good day for Montgomery County residents.
As part of this week's regular council session, members received a briefing from Staff Director Steve Farber outlining the core issues of this year's operating budget that are on the table for council members. Council President Valerie Irvin told us about the approach Mr. Farber thinks the council should take with this year's budget.
How we're going to get to the end game is by balancing the issue of equity across all county agencies. And he talked about how last year when county government employees were hit hard with furloughs, furloughs were not instituted at MCPS, and so had we just received 1 day of furlough from MCPS employees, the entire county employee base would have only had to take 1 day of furlough instead of 6 to 8 days. So he laid that out. He talked about equity as it relates to the county government employees being hit in Ike's proposed budget very hard on their health care benefit splits. Very troubling.
Members of the Planning, Housing, and Economic Development Committee met this week to discuss the proposed operating budget for Park and Planning. The county executive's proposal would reduce that budget by almost 13% from the agency's request. There is some discussion within the agency to voluntarily impose furloughs on employees to avoid some of those cuts. Committee Chair Nancy Florine filled us in.
I am absolutely confident that we're going to find a way that will ensure that Park and Planning can keep to its master plan schedule. It can continue to do the good work it's proposing to do on some of our transportation policies, at funding a study of the bus rapid transit system, and at the same time ensuring that they'll be able to maintain parks and provide the park services that folks expect as well.
As part of a regular series of meetings with representatives, Congresswoman Donna Edwards stopped by the council office building this week for a frank discussion on federal funding. She told council members that securing funding for projects like the Purple Line, Corridor Cities Transitway, and BRAC improvements were top on her list. She also said that dollars for research and development are drying up, which could affect some of the county's larger federal employers like NIH and NOAA, and that there is not a lot of money for Metro. Well, that does it for this edition of the Council in Brief. Tune in again next week for all the council's news. I'm Susan Kennedy. Thanks for watching.